Board to order at 7:02, Tuesday, October 18th, 2022. There was a request made of the chair to take items 4A and B out of order. So we will be starting with Ms. Questle. Oh, yes, please. Ms. Questle, if you don't mind. Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for reminding me. Ms. Questle, the floor is yours.
You're muted.
I'm muted, always do that. So it's my understanding that on the agenda is a administrative item regarding procedures for filing decisions.
Yes.
And so I just wanted to give the board a couple of points regarding filing decisions. The first thing is that the filing of decisions is really a policy decision on the board's part. So if this is a board that wants to see the decision prior to see it in writing, like memorialized on paper prior to it being filed with the town clerk, then my suggestion for that would be that, we have to keep track of certain timelines for that. There are other decisions that the board makes that the board could simply just direct the town planner to draft and file a decision based on with standard findings, and then vote on specific findings and conditions. So it's really up to the board. The one thing that I do want to stress is that we have timelines with regard to special permits and site plan review, decisions. And so as long as we are able to meet those timelines, the board is flexible in how they issue decisions. Now, it is my opinion that special permit decisions do not have to be signed by the entire board. They don't have to be signed by, in fact, they really don't have to be signed by anyone. They just have to be filed with the town clerk and certified that that is the decision. So filing it with the town clerk is the certification that that is the decision. Now, I have very few boards that do not sign special permit decisions. So there's a couple options here. The options are that you could have the full board sign the decision, and if you were a member that voted against the permit, you are still signing the decision, and all you are doing is certifying that was the decision. It's not as if you vote no and then you sign the decision, all of a sudden, your no vote is negated. That's not the case. You could have a majority of the board sign a decision. You could have just the chairman sign the decision, and then I also have boards that have a clerk, and the clerk will sign the decision. So it goes from having the town planner draft and sign the decision down to, the full board. So, and that's a policy decision for this board. I don't expect that you would make those decisions. I don't think you have to make these decisions tonight. I'm just here to give you all of your options as to, drafting and finalizing decisions. With regard to findings, so findings are extremely important in decisions. They're very important in approval decisions in case there is an abutter appeal, and they're very important in denial decisions in case the applicant appeals. And so with regard to findings, so one of the things that that the board can do is the board can close the public hearing to, so that means that all, any new information will not come in. It's closed. The hearing is closed and the board is going to deliberate. So the board's deliberations could be, to establish specific findings. And there's a couple ways that you can memorialize these findings onto a decision, which is you could vote on them individually. You can just come to a consensus because you're at a public meeting. You are expressing your findings. And then, they would be put onto paper on a decision and then, either brought back to the board or brought back to the clerk or the chair or the majority of the board, however you want to do the signing. But you could also close the hearing, deliberate about, things that you think are wrong with the application, things that you think are great for the application, findings, meaning, we don't want to have findings that say that, let me backtrack. We always have findings that follow the statutory findings and your bylaws findings, which is not more detrimental to the neighborhood. And then you have to have specific findings, meaning, for example, if you have a home occupation special permit, and that applicant has attested that there will be no employees, and so there will be no increase in traffic. So you can make a finding that due to the fact that there will be no employees, and very few clients or customers will come to the home occupation, the board finds there will be no increase in traffic, and therefore, with regard to traffic, this will not be more detrimental to the neighborhood. So there are specific findings, there are general findings. And so, I would encourage the board to deliberate on the findings and, come to a consensus on those findings. And again, I'm not trying to be vague, but I have boards that vote on each finding. I have boards that just come to a consensus, and then when the decision comes back in writing, they then vote on the entire decision, making sure that their findings are in there, or certain findings that are in there, no, we didn't make that finding, so take it out, kind of thing. So it really is, it's at the pleasure of the board how you want to do that. And so with regard to a special permit, once you close the hearing, you have 90 days to, issue your decision. You don't have to vote the night that you close it. You can deliberate and you can say, okay, it's 11 o'clock at night. We're not gonna continue this. We're not gonna keep going tonight. We're gonna bring this up at the next meeting. And then at the next meeting, it would be on, old business. You can continue your deliberation and, at some point come to a vote. And then that vote has to be memorialized in writing and filed with the town clerk, which is the final action. So the final action of the board has to be done within 90 days after the close of the public hearing. The other reason to close the public hearing is not only to set that firm 90-day date, but also to cut off public comments, so therefore the board can freely deliberate. So, you can deliberate amongst yourselves. If you have a question, you can ask a question of an applicant or an engineer or Tom or myself if I'm there, providing that we are just clarifying something. There can be no new information provided once the hearing is closed. And so that's pretty much it in a nutshell. Again, I don't necessarily think that this is something that the board's going to want to, vote on tonight. I have already discussed this with your chair, and I can continue working with your chair on, how you guys want to do this, or you can talk about it tonight, how you want to go about, issuing decisions in the future. But I do suggest there be a set procedure as to how you're going to issue decisions, whether you're going to have these decisions come back to you in draft form for you to vote on, or are you going to vote and direct the town planner to draft the decision? That's pretty much the two things. And then how you go about doing each one, we can narrow down those.
What's the specific timeline in regards to opening a public hearing, closing a public hearing? I know you said 90 days for final action on special permits. 65 days to open a public hearing?
Correct.
Correct.
And is there a statutory requirement in regards to closing the public hearing?
There is not. On a special permit, there is not. On a variance or an appeal of a building commissioner's or a building department determination, there is, but those go to the zoning board of
Right,
appeals, not to the planning board.
Right, that's an appeal, all right.
So those are finite. Those are 100 days from when the application is filed. There's a difference between that and a special permit.
There's a 100-day requirement in regards to the appeals?
Appeals and variances,
Okay.
correct.
And appeals.
And that's sections 8 and 15 of chapter 48.
You said there's no timeline for the deliberations for the
No,
public
for
hearing?
the length, she said there's no
Length-
timelines for the
length.
length of the public hearing, I believe.
Timeline length, yeah.
So, correct. So provided that, so a special permit has to be, the public hearing has to be open within 65 days. And once that public hearing is opened, that public hearing can be continued, hopefully with agreement of the parties. And then at some point, that public hearing is closed. The public hearing is closed upon a vote of the board to close the public hearing, or in some instances, when the board votes, which means that the public hearing, so a public hearing is closed when all public comment has been cut off. And so, once that public comment has been cut off, it's determined that the public hearing has been closed, and that's when the 90 days kicks in. That's when the 90 days start. There is a case from the land court, a Lancaster case, where the applicant refused to continue, and the board continued it. And at the next meeting, the board heard from a traffic engineer, they heard from abutters, et cetera, and the court said that the hearing was continued because there was new information provided to the board. However, that's the only case I could find where a continuance was not, mutually agreed upon by the board and the applicant. So, for a special permit.
Okay.
So we have 90 days for a decision.
90 days after the close of a hearing
Yeah.
to make final action is what I
So
understand.
for example, just as an example, your last public hearing, I looked it up, your last public hearing was on September 27th. If you had closed the hearing on that night, your 90 days would be December 26th.
Excellent.
So,
And so by December 26th, this board has to take final action. And final action, according to the Attleboro Building Inspector case, has been determined to be the filing of a decision with the town clerk.
Is there a place in particular where we can find guidance on establishing policy procedures? And the
So,
appropriate...
Like I said, every planning board is different. And then, as you all know, you are elected officials, and so, there's turnover. And so, there's not, Tom might be able to help out here. I don't know. CPTC, they don't really provide examples of how certain boards do things.
I didn't know if there was statutory guidelines or recommendations from the state.
No, the statutory guideline is that the decision has to be filed within the statutory time.
I meant in regards to policy making. In other words, establishing that this is how we're gonna handle these certain situations.
No, it doesn't. So the statute does not require that 5 members sign a decision. And therefore, it leaves it open. It leaves it open to boards.
So Amy, a follow-up question. In the case of subdivision rules or regulations, you have to hold a hearing for those. If the
Yes.
board is looking to amend their own internal policies, is there a hearing notice requirement for that? Or is that
Yes,
simply just
I
posting it
would-
on the agenda?
Yeah, posting on the agenda.
Okay, no requirement to advertise, just put it on the agenda?
No, if it's just a policy, it can be done with an open meeting, not a public hearing.
Okay. So the board does have a operations procedure manual that I found some time back and shared with the board. So we are going to be looking at what's in the current policy, operating procedures over the next few meetings and deciding are those things we like or are those things we want to fix and those things remove. And I'll bring some examples of other places that I've been and other places that where I've got my personal mentions out there who know their stuff. And I always go to look at what they're doing and try to steal their stuff and apply it where we can here in Carver.
Now, when establishing policy, how does the board agree what policy is?
A majority.
And so a vote should be taken.
Well, yes, I think so. And I mean, it can be done by a consensus, but if you are establishing a written policy, then it should be done by majority.
Can that be done outside of open meeting?
No.
Okay, so if, for instance, somebody drafts up a policy, we have one here that's been presented to us. It's not something that can be shared amongst the board for their consideration to make changes in regards to, that has to be done in open meeting, is that what you're?
Any deliberation on that policy
Okay.
has to be done in an open meeting. So therefore, your town planner, your staff can send out the policy to the board members, and that can be done on a group email with all 5 board members. Remember, never hit reply all. That's my big motto. You can then, board members can then take that policy, mark it up, comment on it, amongst, internally, individually, and then bring it to the meeting where you are going to discuss that policy. And then you have, you will be deliberating on the policy in a public meeting. If you have any questions on the policy, you can definitely respond to Tom, but you cannot hit reply all with your question to the town planner. You can only respond directly to him. So the best way to avoid any open meeting allegation or violation would be to never hit reply all.
Questions?
Mine were pretty much answered.
I want to thank you for your time tonight, Amy. I don't see any questions being raised, so we really appreciate you coming.
Okay, and if you have any other questions, Mr. Chairman, just please let me know, and Tom and I can figure out something.
Great, thank you very much.
All right,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Have a good night.
Good night, Mayor.
Okay.
All right. Our next order of business is discussion with Eversource.
So if I may, Mr. Chair.
Please.
At a previous meeting, the planning board had some questions about the interconnection process and how plans change from start to finish. So I reached out to Ryan Earl at Eversource, and brought his team with us from Eversource. They were gracious enough to attend the solar bylaw committee meeting earlier tonight. So happy to have you guys hang out with us for a little bit longer, and we'll get you home before breakfast, I promise.
Sounds good to us. Happy to be here, Tom.
Good evening, gentlemen. Nice to see you again. I know you had a discussion with the Solar Bylaw Study Committee earlier, but I expect that we're going to rehash a lot of those questions, so I think it would be best that if we started in the same manner. I believe you made your presentation and discussed the process. So I will open the floor to you.
Sure, Brett Jacobson here from Eversource. I'm the manager of the distributed generation group on the customer care side of the house. So, process, so customers, different shapes and sizes, some very large, some very small, rooftop residential, all the way up to the, what we would call a standalone facility, which could be in a field, a cranberry bog, which generates power directly into the distribution system. So customers come to us with a proposal slash application that has the type of project, solar typically, site plans, one lines, cut sheets, etc. Our company can look at that information, look at the location of where the project is, see what the current situation is, what our infrastructure looks like there, and what the impact of those projects would look like if they were to generate in those locations. So there's different screens and studies that we do, and then ultimately at the conclusion of those studies, the customer is given what's called an interconnection service agreement, or an ISA, and with that agreement, we'll have a plus or minus high-level cost estimate to accommodate any upgrades that may be required on the distribution system to be able to accommodate the generation going into the system. So that's kind of a high, that's for the bigger projects. The smaller projects, the rooftop residential, those are pretty quick and typically only require a meter swap, and wouldn't go through the upgrade requirements.
At what point does the local planning boards come into this conversation? Prior to, during, or in their application process with you?
So in the application process by tariff, there's no requirement from the customer to provide us that they've got town permits. We do try to work with them because it's jointly beneficial to get a final and completed design from them. So when we go out to do our construction design on our side of the fence, or our side of the meter, we can go out and do it once. Because there is no requirement for that town permit to be completed, we do often run into multiple iterations where we'll provide a design, and a lot of that design is speaking for a developer, I guess, in this case, so they can have a cost estimate to make sure that their project is still viable. So my understanding is they're doing things in parallel. So I think I lost my my train of thought a little bit, but typically during after they pay us, that's a good indicator that the project's going forward. We try to confirm with the developer that this is their final design. Eversource is ready to do our thing, but there is no defined requirement for them to provide us any town permit.
So if they decide to go forward, there is a cost analysis that is at the onus of the applicant, correct? It's not something that you provide for free, that you will do it. And if they decide to move forward on it,
Correct. So the first kind of wave of those studies, we do give a high level plus or minus, 25%. That gives them a go, go, no go, whether they're gonna pursue the project. Typically, once we do get into the final design, there isn't too much of a, variance off of the original application. But in some cases, as mentioned during the previous, discussion, they will come across some sort of issue with, a butter, some part of their design that they can't get through the town process. So then they'll come back to us with an updated proposal of what the requirements are. And then we'll kind of refine that design and estimate.
I know you mentioned earlier in regards to capacity of the system and its current state. Depending on the project, the size of the project, and the load capacity for what's existing in the area. If you could just give us a little explanation on how that falls into where the projects are
Sure.
situated.
I think the question was, why do different projects have different costs? Maybe the same size project would have a different cost. A lot of it, or most of it, has to do with the existing infrastructure that's in place, where the project wants to integrate with the distribution system. So in some of the more rural areas in Eversource territory, the existing infrastructure is designed for lower loads, not big city buildings and data centers and things like that. So the infrastructure is not always prepared for a large generator to basically backfeed into the system. So in those areas, we need to upgrade transformers, wires, sometimes even provide dedicated feeders, which is wires for a system. If the existing usage and load in that area is already using up the existing capacity to our system.
Now, what is your final pieces of equipment or the first pieces coming off the project? Where at what point do you want Eversource's responsibility to be ended? At the interconnection point at the street, or?
Yeah, so the point of interconnection or the transfer of responsibilities at the meter, which is typically at the road.
And what sort of equipment is involved in that interconnection?
Well, there's always a meter, and then on the utility side, it really could be, it could be almost nothing, it could be all the way back to the substation where we need to upgrade, wires, transformers, in some cases even substations. So it really depends on size of project, location of project, other projects or other load in that area, and then based on the studies we do, how does that integrate or how does that layer into what the system would need going forward.
At what point is the final interconnection established in a permanent manner? In other words, it's decided on, this is what we need and this is the equipment. At what point in that process does that happen?
So the very end, so after they get their permits and pay us and we go forward with construction on our end, the wire inspection gets completed, Once the wire inspector notifies us that all is good on his end and all of our work is done, meters installed, paperwork, completed, that's the time when we would issue permission to operate to the customer.
Well, I meant more along the design principle. Sometimes 12 or 14 telephone poles are proposed at the interconnection site, and at what point in the process are those decisions made?
Okay, yeah, so they're looked at from a high level during the first phase, but not until we get into the final design, once the customer is paid. And I think one of the questions earlier is, how do we come out of the gates with with the design? It's, typically first cost, first lowest cost, which is typically overhead design, shortest path, et cetera. And we would do the design that way unless, guided other ways by the customer based off of what their requirements are with their town permit. So ideally, the town permit would be completed before the customer came to us and said, I'm ready for my final cost. What happens, it feels like a lot of things are kind of going on in parallel to try to, with the optimistic goal of everything's good on both sides and it kind of comes to the finish line at once. Doesn't always happen, but I think speaking for a developer, I'm guessing that's what they're striving to do.
Now, is there ever any preference on your side in regards to above ground or underground interconnection?
No, like I said, our practice is, low cost, unless guided otherwise by customer, town, et cetera. And then we can certainly design, based on what, knowing what the need is.
I didn't bring my notes, so does anybody have any questions in regards to this?
I do.
Please.
So you mentioned cost. So is cost more utility poles or a higher cost the underground?
My experience is that overhead poles and wires is cheaper.
Okay. Thank you for being honest.
Yeah, and that's how we almost always, unless asked otherwise, would do a design. Obviously, I think the way that I explained it last time was, we're not going to build a Cadillac if it only needs, a Honda, unless someone asks us to build us a Cadillac.
Well, I think as a planning board, we're looking to try to keep it underground as often as possible. And I think that we want you to know that's important to us, to avoid the poles, if we can. But it seems like it's a cost issue.
Correct.
All right. Is there any specific capacity requirements, or does the state or federal government require areas to have renewable energy requirements? I know there's a SMART program incentives and various other incentives, but are you under any requirement in regards to development, purchasing, or?
We have a requirement to serve. So if someone within our territory requests any type of service, whether it's for their solar system or a building or a house, we need to respond.
But Eversource is a distribution company,
Yes.
not a generation company. They're just moving the juice. They're not making the juice
Correct.
anymore.
Anymore.
That was N-Star. That was old school.
And just to add to that, even though you may get billed for supplier charges on your bill, it's just a pass-through for us, because we gotta buy it as well. So we make no profit on the generation. That's why we really don't care, we're actually kind of promoting new, clean, reliable energy versus like, gas and oil-fired combustion units.
Because it's locally generated and locally used?
Well, again, we don't make any profit on it, it's just a pass-through for us, so we'd rather see clean energy.
All right.
Quick question regarding the solar sites. We know that you guys spoke in the previous meeting regarding the requirement for the SMART program to have anything greater than 500 kilowatts has to have a battery storage built into it. With some of these older solar installations that are in place that don't have the battery storage connected to it, and mentions in previous meetings that battery storage, retrofitting battery storage into these installations would be quite convenient for the local area. What are we looking at as far as your involvement with regards to retrofitting these sites, as far as plans and requirements that we may be needing to look at for the sites in order to retrofit?
Yeah, again, so for us, it would be the same process. So fundamentally, what we want to understand on the distribution side is how that generating facility is going to perform, when it's going to export to the grid. Especially with storage, there's different ways that developers can operate storage devices to maximize different type of incentive programs. So any retrofit would just be treated the same as, as a new project. We would do studies if needed, identify if anything that they've changed requires any new any new work on our side. So same process whether it's new or retrofit.
Further questions from the board?
Pretty much answered my questions.
I'm good.
Just real quick, what is you were talking about how you guys, and I can appreciate that you guys don't really, you don't make any money on the generation, or that you're just a pass through. What is the cost per kilowatt hour of the solar power versus the natural gas or coal-fired plants?
You're getting a little bit out of my wheelhouse there.
Okay.
That's something I can take note of, and I'll be sure to follow up with Tom.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.
Any further questions from the board? No?
How long are the panels good for?
I don't know if you heard that. The question was, how long are the panels good for?
Again, that's more of probably a question for the solar companies. My knowledge about reading about them, 25, 30-year lifespan. To be quite frank, this, we probably haven't lived through it yet to actually know what these are going to look like towards the end, the end of the life cycles.
Yeah, I think that the panels themselves last longer. It's the inverters and the controllers that they need to change out ahead of time. So just like your cell phone, it gets outdated in 3 years, 5 years. But the panels themselves, even though they're less efficient, right, than future models, the lifespan could be like 25, 30 years, as Brett mentioned.
So you'd replace them as necessary?
Replace the panels as necessary. You probably have a scheduled routine maintenance on the inverters and the controls.
Is there mercury in
And that would be
those?
a contract with the developer.
Are there mercury in the panels, do you know? Is there mercury in them?
I don't know.
again, we'll follow up. I'm taking notes, and I'll leave my
All right.
contact information in the chat following, so it can be documented. And if there's any other follow-up questions, it can be asked through email, or you can give me a call.
Everybody,
And again, that was a whole lot of information, folks, so if you do have questions, please reach out. Through Tom, we did have a meeting with Tom and the solar committee earlier. I think we answered a lot of questions, but if you have any future questions, please reach out. Again, we're here to, work with you. We don't care how it gets done, whether it's overhead or underground, that's the town's preference. As I mentioned in the previous meeting, if it's our infrastructure that's going to be upgraded, right, we require a rental location, we will go to the town. And at that time, he'll tell us, I want it underground, I want a pole on this side of the street, I want it, underground across the street, that's all information that we'll work with the town on. On private property, again, it's the developer who will work with the town on getting approved stamp site plans.
okay.
And one final question from me, if you will.
Sure.
The contact that y'all mentioned that you guys have that works with the town as far as for the infrastructure upgrades and interconnections that you were referring to, who is that particular contact?
I think that's Ryan.
I think I can be your point of contact for any questions as the community relations specialist. I believe if you're referring to a question in the previous meeting, it was a right-of-way agent, and they deal with, any rights with the town or when we're going to put new infrastructure in a community.
Okay.
Off the top of my head, I don't know who the right-of-way agent is for the town of Carver, but I can get
They
that.
have a dedicated AE as well, Ryan, so we might want to provide that information.
Absolutely, I can do that. Yep.
All right, I want to thank you gentlemen very much. It's been very helpful and informative, and we really appreciate your time this evening.
Yeah, just to echo, what Warren said, we welcome questions, because sometimes it feels like, there's a lot of information out there that's not always accurate about Eversource and solar, and, you guys might only be hearing one side of the story, so feel free to reach out to us. We're more than happy to, let you know what's going on, within our walls as well.
We appreciate that very much.
All right, Ryan, Brett, Warren, Aiden, and your flock of interns from earlier tonight, thanks for coming out. See you next time.
Have a great night.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Have a great night, everybody.
Thank you.
All right, our next order of business is lot release, Ricketts Pond Business Park, map 32, lots 1-1, 1-3, 1-4, 1-5, and 1-6. Discussion and possible vote.
All right, if I may.
Please.
The applicants are here. The information that I put together for the board includes the lots that they have requested to be released. We have a bond in place. These lots are under the surety. They requested releasing lot 1, but I think we already released lot 1. So this is a fairly routine procedure for releasing the lots from the covenant in order to make sure that there's a bond in place that the subdivision has been completed. So we have a bond in place, work's being done in the subdivision, and they'll be back to us at some point for some other issues with bond reduction and things like that. But currently, we have a bond in place. Amount's been verified by our consulting engineer, and as to the form of the bond by town council as well.
Has the roadway been completed?
The pavement is down. We get
Okay.
we get inspections from Fuss and O'Neill on that. So Christina Vieira has been out and has been sending us updates as to where the road work is being done at. But and Peter can clarify that. But the wearing course, the base course of the roadway, I think is down for most of the entire length at this point. And we've got a bond in place to ensure that the rest of it goes in.
And basically, we're holding the lots in surety that the work is complete, and now we're changing that over to a bond, which are,
We've had the bond since we released the first
Okay.
lots.
all right.
So the bond's in place and has been.
Excellent. Questions, concerns of the board? Anything you'd like to contribute?
I'm just looking at the notes from the minutes of the May 24th meeting, and I thought we had only released lots 2 and 2A, 2 and 2B.
Well, the lot release form is for all of them, so I don't think there's any downside to moving to release lots 1, 3, 4, 5, and 6.
Okay.
They're all on the list.
Anybody have any questions, timeframes, construction, anything like that?
Oh, I don't think so. That was all, most of that's been handled in the subdivision control. If our engineer is satisfied with the bond amount and our town council agrees that it is appropriate,
Any other concerns that you might have before the vote is taken?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, do we take into account any of the legal action that's going on?
Nope.
no, it's,
Okay.
the bond is only surety for completing of the task that was required by the town, which is
Okay.
the building of the subdivision road and all ancillary requirements.
All right.
Is the total road in?
Is the total road in?
Yeah, the road.
Yeah, we're paved all the way to the cul-de-sac. The only thing that we would not have done so far would be the wearing course, and generally you don't do the wearing course.
No, I understand that,
Construction
yeah.
has taken place, so.
And that's why we hold the bond to ensure the finished work. Any further questions? Nope. Seeing none, the board will accept a motion in regards to this application for bond release from Ricketts Pond,
I'll make the motion.
lot release. Motion made by Mr. Gatsky. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Mr. Robertson. Discussion from the board? Seeing none, Mr. Dion,
Mr. Dion says aye.
Mr. Gatsky,
John Gasky says aye.
Mr. Robertson,
Kevin Robinson says aye.
Ms. Sardillo,
Ms. Sodillo says aye.
and Mr. Shea says aye. Thank you, gentlemen.
So if you'd be so kind of have a lot release form here that you guys could sign, that'd be
Yeah.
great. And for our standard procedure, if you could not sign, Connie,
Oh, right.
because I gotta
Yep,
bring you to a
Right.
notary.
yes, and I think we can discuss it in the meeting, but yes, we had, I'll wait till the director's notes. but-
I wasn't expecting company.
Well, I'm hoping it wasn't, it's that the building's on fire, because I heard all the alarms.
Haven't heard any smoke alarms going off
Yeah.
yet.
All right. Our next order of business is Jellystone Park, Cranberry Acres, 20 Shoestring Road, minor modification to Water Park. Discussion and possible vote. As I understand it, we don't have the engineer's comments and recommendations at this point.
We do not, it's opening night, we've
Don't
got
sign.
the
You sign.
design engineer for it with us.
Yep.
We'll walk through what's transpiring on the site.
I'm sorry, real quick question, Tom. Do we need to provide all of our copies? Do we need to sign
No.
all of our copies,
No.
just the one?
Just the
Okay.
one.
All right. How do we allow them to present, and will they be heard through the open mic?
Yeah,
Comfortably?
We're gonna roll them up here to the front row. Just like Bob Bucher, you're right on the front row.
What do you want me?
That'd be great, yep. I'm gonna give this back to you.
I understand that there were some plans that didn't come through or something, so I printed off some, but I think you already have them. This is Tom. This is just the structure, whole structure plans, as well as some color stuff to
If we're
clarify.
keeping notes, we just need you to let us know your name.
Oh, yes, Dan Flores with SFC Engineering. I'm the engineer for this project.
And thank you. Because we're not working with our typical microphones, I will have to ask you to speak loudly, Dan. Enunciate.
Yeah, if fine, just have a seat, Dan, chair, it'd be next to the mic, you've got the laptop, all the comforts of home without any of the comforts of home.
Yes, thank you.
You need the karaoke screen or?
Yeah, so again, my name is Dan Flores with SFC Engineering. I'm the engineer for this project. We were here back in August for the Phase 2 campsites, and now we're here for the water park. And I supplied you with some color plans. One is the existing conditions plan, and the other one is a site plan. So if you look at the existing conditions plan, what I wanted to point out is the road network that is around it. You've seen this pool development back in February on the site plan that was approved. Our plan now basically details that, addresses stormwater. So in this plan, just to orient you, the existing lodge is here, the existing pool is here, and then the road network is around it. If I go to the next plan, that's a demo plan. So here we see the pool area. The lodge remains, the existing pool is replaced with a, Hazel?
Say, okay. I'll find it later wherever it's at.
A small mechanical building to service the pools, and then the pools themselves. And again, if, just to orient you, the roadway is in color, showing that doesn't change. So basically, we're focused in on that area. Today, that area consists of, again, that lodge, the pool that gets replaced, and 25 campsites. All but these 7 campsites get removed, and you've seen these campsites on the previous plan from August. The next plan you see is the design plan showing grading and utilities.
How much, what's the extent of the grading going to be in this particular area?
You can see it well on that plan there.
The grading is not included in here.
Yeah, the next plan. Did I give you both?
We got 2.
Oh, shoot, okay. You can see the contours here. Everything stops before that roadway. So if we look at the roadway that exists today, it exists in the same spot. We don't grade up to it. And then on this side, these sites you've seen on the previous site plan, and the lodge area is here.
Now, this grading is going up the hill, right?
Yeah, this is
The
a.
back.
Yeah, the site slopes down towards the pond today. There are retaining walls throughout for the sites that are there today. There's also a large retaining wall here for the pool that exists today. Basically, we're just extending that wall along here. And there's another wall here that goes from 1 foot to 4 feet against these sites, and then another very small wall over here. If I go back to the existing, you can see that a bit better.
Where will the retention center be for this? For the water, is it going back on its own?
Yeah, so,
So none of it would be able to go back into the pond, right?
correct. All of the stormwater from this area, so today, nothing's treated. All the stormwater just runs down the roads and basically towards the pond. We're capturing all the stormwater here in deck drains. And first it goes through a separating unit to provide pretreatment, so any solids or stuff get taken out. And then to an infiltration basin here.
Okay. I see that now.
And we're able to infiltrate, and we reduce the peak flow for all design storms.
And this is a proposal for 2 pools?
Correct. It's an activity pool here that's 3.5 feet deep. and a splash pad, which is 8 inches deep. And this is the one that has the slide structures that was included.
And you're pouring a concrete pad over this whole particular?
Correct. Yep,
So the gray is all concrete.
correct. Yep.
Do you know offhand the extent of the impervious surfaces being created?
I do. Existing is 28,730. We increased that to 40,450 for an increase of 11,720.
What was that total?
11,720 square foot increase.
No, I'm asking because we ran into a concern earlier today, and we're curious to see if this aspect falls.
Well,
That's something we'll have to,
yeah, so a special permit has been issued for this. Our initial visit, we had a special permit for the use and the initial site plan, and they came back for that second site plan as well. So to what extent is 4,300 in that, we'll have to take a look.
yeah, that's all I'm at. I just want, because somebody else has run into issues with that, and we don't want that to happen again, so,
Yeah, so the question on this would be, would we need to kind of punt over to
for sure, we're gonna
Concom?
include Concom in this and Board of Health. I think, and I would expect
And so Dan, where are you guys at with the Conservation Commission?
Fire Department.
I sent it to Gary. He has it on file. Basically, we're good. Their only concern, when I met with them to amend the order of conditions, their only concern was the pool backwash. So we have a tank here that receives the backwash from the filter system. We pump that to a infiltration, oh my goodness.
But it's well outside the 100-foot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Cistern type
Yeah,
of?
and that's sized to meet all state setbacks, and then it'll be registered as a UIC, underground injection control well with DEP.
I know we discussed car parking and sorting that out by wheel stops at one of our meetings.
Okay, I must have.
But that's all right. I'm sure Andrew Glines will, because that was his biggest issue. Now, you're not removing the existing lodge.
Correct,
You're removing the pool and replacing it with a mechanical building.
correct. Yep.
So is this the mechanical building? Or
Yes, yep.
Okay. I was gonna ask. Lights, height,
The building height, the splash pad, the slides that we show, actually 30 foot 9 inch maximum,
okay.
and the mechanical building is 21 foot 9 inch.
Yeah, that tab next door to it that says CST, that's your elevations there.
Okay. Is this going to be, where's the water coming from? Is it just gonna be recirculated amongst,
It is. Yep.
okay, for all intents and purposes, it'll be the same water that we discussed, limiting it to park
Correct.
residents only?
All right, so it's just under 22 feet tall.
And you mentioned lighting. The intent is this will not be lighted. When it gets dark, it shuts down. So we wanna
Excellent,
preserve
that's
that
fantastic
experience.
for safety,
Yeah, I believe in the
That would be
special permit, the hours of operation for the pool ended at 8. Actually,
And if you could go back to just give us an outline of where your fencing is gonna go?
Sure.
at 9 AM to 8 PM, water park hours.
Yeah, so since this is just a activity pool and splash pool, there's not going to be any lifeguard on duty, right? Or would there just
That's,
be like,
I would anticipate not, but I'm not sure.
okay,
The whole thing is fully fenced, so the fence starts here at the lodge, comes all the way around comes into the mechanical building, comes out of the mechanical building, comes along the retaining wall, all the way around the pool deck, this side of the infiltration trench basin, and then into the structure here, and then it continues again on this side.
Okay.
And we have one point of entry right here. You can see it better on the next one.
Yeah, it looks like
Yeah.
It's
Is it-
south of the pool, yeah.
This one and then this one.
service gate, yeah. And
I
main
see,
entry gate.
I see service gate. All right, because that service gate is specific to the building.
So is it chain link fence?
Yes.
Is it about 4 feet high, 5 feet?
4 feet.
4 feet.
All right. Will there be food in the pool area?
I don't believe so. That hasn't been discussed.
If there's to be food or beverages in that area, we're gonna recommend a vermin control plan, if it's gonna be allowed. Off the top of my head, I don't have questions right now.
Yeah, I don't really have anything right now either. So the structure's gonna be 31 feet tall.
Right, our max, what's our max in town?
35.
35?
Yeah, the zoning table on that sheet has been updated.
And this is a residential area.
Yes.
Prohibition of glass on concrete surfaces.
I'm into a pool where that wasn't.
Right, I figured, but, you know, it wasn't.
And I was a
right,
lifeguard for 4 or 5 years.
It wasn't mentioned, so,
No running, no glass.
all right.
No pushing.
Snacks optional. You brought up a cookie for the lifeguard. Snacks were optional.
And so I'm looking forward to seeing our engineers and conservation report, Board of Health, and recommendation from the fire department in regards to make sure that they feel it's appropriately accessible. Although I don't see that that will be an issue, but.
Just so I don't drop the ball on my end, for the Conservation Commission, I have given this to Gary. He has it in his file. Is there anything further for me to do?
No,
Yeah, why don't you just shoot a follow-up email to Gary and copy me, your discussion tonight, just so Gary and I get on the same page. Even though our offices are next door to each other, we.
And should I reach out to Board of Health and then Fire Department?
I would think,
Yeah, they'll be reporting back as part of the site plan review process.
yeah.
Anything I can answer? Or?
No further questions, so, all right, well, we appreciate your
Any
time.
questions from?
Oh, yep. It's a minor modification, is this a public?
Well, it's not, but sometimes.
No, absolutely.
I see people in here who I don't know.
No,
What their particular interest is, so.
right, and I am always welcoming of public comment, so if anybody has any questions or comments they'd like to direct towards our applicant. All right.
Oh, I do have one last question. It might not make any sense, but as far as the park is concerned, the water park, is that going to be open to every camper, or is it going to be like an additional cost? I guess what I'm getting at is, if it's an additional cost, is the 4-foot fence going to be enough from people jumping over the fence if they haven't been able to?
My understanding is
Have
it's
it.
open to all campers. Campers only. Nobody from outside, just the campers. But I believe any camper that comes is entitled to use it.
Okay.
Is there going to be a requirement for supervision at a certain age?
I would say yes.
Okay. That's something that we'd like to see, you know.
Yeah, they've implemented this same design in all their parks, up to 24 of them now at this point, I believe.
Okay.
Been very, very successful with them.
So
That's-
it's not their first rodeo.
No,
That's all I have.
great, thank you.
Right, thanks again.
Righty, so do we want to talk about continues to a date certain?
Yes, we-
Obviously-
Please until first, we can get a report back from First O'Neill.
Yeah, so it's in Andy's hands, so he'll, take a little time to get back to us or so.
Yes, our next meeting is,
And I know that everything takes a long time construction-wise, so even though nobody's jumping in the pool, this,
They want to shovel in the ground December 1st.
yeah,
So,
there's a lot of that.
I was gonna say, we're gonna have to wait for Concom as well,
Yeah.
so.
So how about, because we've talked about a November 1 meeting date.
as opposed to,
Well, we talked about a couple different dates because our regular meeting is on November 8th.
that's right, but
And
we are,
November 8th is an election,
yeah,
and the board is not allowed to have a hearing. They can have a meeting, but they can't have a hearing per state law on election day.
currently we have one, tonight the 18th, we have one on the 25th.
And so we had talked about the 25th is next week, and then looking at the 1st and perhaps the 15th for those meetings. So we know we're continuing to the 1st, and that's
2 weeks.
2 weeks out. So why don't we shoot for the 1st, and if we're ready to go, we'll chat it up.
Would the 9th be possible?
Meeting on Wednesday the 9th?
Yes.
I would have no idea. We worked pretty hard to make sure we had room secured for Tuesday night.
Right,
I
right.
didn't know that, Wednesday was in the,
I wouldn't be available for
Okay,
Wednesday night.
no, that's fine.
Yeah.
Then that's out. It just seems we're packing a lot of meetings in every week.
I think it
but-
would make sense to try to make it the 15th opposed to the 1st.
But then that's,
Then we still,
that's a 2 week, right? No, that'll be a 3 weeks between meetings, and there's certain statutory requirements to fall into the 21
Yeah.
days, so,
it's going to have to be the 1st.
yeah, I don't think so.
yeah, like I said, if we're not ready to go, Dan's pretty good about communicating.
Yeah,
I like
no, absolutely.
continue it to date, the next day.
November 1st at 7 PM.
All right.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Are we going to have a whole meeting or just meet in order to address that?
We'd have to open up for a whole meeting, but I don't think we're gonna load the meeting up because we're gonna be having one in pretty much every week at this point. for the next
That's
2
my
weeks.
point.
Yeah,
So
I'm saying trying to not
would-
have you a meeting every week, because I want people to have the strength to go forward and eat cornbread and cranberries, especially cranberries.
right. But
It's
we
Thanksgiving,
got
how many guys going face down from exhaustion on, Thanksgiving?
18, 25, and 1st, should cover everything. I think he's the only one currently scheduled for the 1st, but, yeah, where we gotta have scheduled on the 25th currently? Anything?
We got one item,
Okay, that we haven't addressed yet?
correct.
Okay.
Now, that one particular item is, and I say right now on the 25th, we have one item up, but there's also the potential for bringing our next applicant, 0 Forest Street, back on the 25th for the site plan vote, potentially.
Right, yes,
So we got one in the bag, perhaps
All
another
right.
for the 25th.
excellent. All right. So our next order of business is public hearing continued on the application of Prolio Concrete Forms, Inc., requesting a site plan review pursuant to sections 2230 and 3100 of the Carver zoning bylaws for property located at 0 Forest Street in Carver, Mass. in the general business zoning district. Applicant proposes the construction of a single commercial building, associated utilities, stormwater control, parking lots and access drives. The building will be used as a craftsman tradesman building, and this public hearing is being continued.
All right. So Bob, introduce yourself to the folks.
Okay, for the record, my name's Bob Rigo. I'm with Riverhawk Environmental. We're the civil engineers for the project.
Bob, nice to see you.
Nice
I
seeing
think
you.
the first time we've seen you, right?
Yeah, this is the first time I had a broken leg, so I was a little.
Oh,
So I
yeah.
made Glenn handle it
Glenn
for
was
the
carrying
first two
a-
meetings.
He
Yeah.
did well. He carried a lot of weight on his shoulders.
Exactly.
Right. I don't know, is there anything, any new information? We did get our, letter back from the town engineer. But I think Glenn wanted to make sure you were here at some point to
Yeah.
answer our questions.
Definitely. So there was, Fuss and O'Neill completed their review. There's a letter that says basically everything was satisfied, so we satisfied all their requirements. Not sure, there was an issue today that was brought up. I'm not sure by who, but one of the planning board members regarding the need for a special permit.
Yep, that would have been me.
Okay.
So, and I'm sorry, but I apologize. This is maybe something that we should have caught earlier, but again, it's an issue now, and we just want to make sure that you're fully in compliance, because
Sure.
otherwise you're going to have issues.
Sure. So what we thought, and to run by the board, was to maybe to get a vote on the project as it stands, but modify, instead of proposing pavement around the building, propose a full gravel parking lot at this point. Have the board vote on it as a project with a basically essentially a full gravel parking lot and less than 10,000 square feet of impervious area. And then we'd move forward, we'd proceed basically with a separate special permit application to pave the lot after. And then procedurally, I don't know if that's something that's
I
available to
would
the
ask
board.
Tom that it's still going to fall under that particular bylaw at that, regardless, because once 10,000 square feet of a lot is rendered impervious, it falls under that, whether it's done today, next week, and the week after, so it's still going to require that special permit.
Right, so we would apply for the special permit essentially tomorrow, but we thought that we could move forward with this since it's been fully reviewed, everything's good. We just reduce the amount of impervious area to less than 10,000 square feet so we could obtain a vote.
Well, are we prohibited from voting on it if it's conditional on?
We're not. I think the board could vote to approve the special permit contingent on filing the requisite special permit.
Approval of the
Yeah.
required special
Yeah,
permit.
for over 10,000.
That's it.
And that way, your site plan is tied to the special permit that comes up, and if somebody shows up with a site plan that says, I want to build this, they go, well, where's your special permit to go with it?
Right, and of course, if it's conditional on that, then it wouldn't be approved until your special permit's approved.
Well, your site plan would be approved, you just couldn't build anything because you didn't have permission for the use.
Okay,
So you got a map, you got a blueprint essentially, like here's where we're gonna put the stuff. But you don't get to put any stuff until you get the permission.
And I had a little different thought, but, I'm just trying to figure it out on the fly here, but our thought was we'd make our site plan, and I submitted one today after I got the email, I modified it. It's a gravel parking lot, so less than 10,000 square feet of impervious area. So it would not require a special permit.
no, but it would require further review by the board and the engineers, and then you're pushing it out a couple weeks anyway,
So it still would require, even though it's just a change to go from a asphalt surface to a gravel surface.
Right, because it changes water retention, infiltration.
It lessens water, it lessens runoff, and increases infiltration, which is only a benefit to the stormwater. It's not something to review engineer. We're not gonna have to provide additional drainage capacity or anything. It'll actually be a slight reduction. So that was just, and then it'd be approved. Essentially, it would work as a project, but we still would like to pave the lot, so we would apply for a special permit. That was,
Right, no, I understand, but, yeah.
I think the cleanest way to do it would be to condition the special permit on the issuance of to condition the site plan on the issuance of the special permit.
Right, because
That way, you've got the final design locked in,
yeah,
and then it's just a matter of allowing the use and of that additional pavement area.
right, yeah, further review, because you're changing the plans at this point is gonna kick it back a couple steps on you, and if the board doesn't see issue with proceeding based on that, then I wouldn't have any issue
Okay.
either.
So we'd get a vote on basically the site plan with pavement, but we would.
As presented, yep, and as discussed, yep.
But then we would need a special permit for the use.
Right, which you're gonna have to get anyways.
We're gonna.
Yeah.
Okay.
And for the record, when we had this conversation today, everybody missed it. The applicant, the engineer, our engineer, building commissioner apparently, and, we found it today.
While I have you here, I have just a couple quick questions. What are the planned hours of operations?
I'll let Mr. Priola.
All right.
He's gonna be good.
Come on up, Glenn,
I think, okay, I think.
and introduce yourself.
Glenn Priola, Forest Street. It's just tradesmen, so it'd probably be 7 to 6, just normal working hours.
7
And
to
it's
7,
not-
Monday through Friday,
Yeah.
something along those
I mean,
lines?
I don't want to, if I can, Saturdays are usually a half a day.
Well, we would think something like
Yeah,
9 to
that's how we
5 or
usually do
something.
it. And on the other thing that you were talking about with Bob real quick, I mean, we're trying to come up with something, that's why we came up with the gravel, so.
You want to move forward,
Well, just so I can
understandably.
pay Jack and clean up the lot, 'cause it's
I
just-
get it.
But I mean, conditioning it on the special permit's fine too, because by the time we're moving forward, it just keeps us moving forward so we can get it approved on, I mean, so it was just trying to get this part of it out of the way so we know we're just working on the special.
Right, and when it comes to the special permit, it requires certain recommendations from other boards. But you would know where you stand anyways after the
Right.
meeting. Another thing, you had proposed snow removal into the gravel parking lot.
Back section by the dumpster.
Yeah, as it happens, you're in a wellhead protection area, so that's either gonna have to be removed from site or introduced into the infiltration basins.
We can remove it from site, because
Okay.
we have other sites we can move it to.
And I didn't see a notation on the height of the pole light proposed in the backyard.
12 feet.
That's fine. The screening that I saw in the landscaping, it didn't look like it was year-round screening on the street side. You had put various bushes, perennials, and a pair of trees. But all the parking areas, and you're requesting to be parked in front of the building, they have to be screened from the street, and that's 365
We
days a
usually
year.
use green giants, because they open up and they cover it year
Yeah.
round.
All right.
So I mean, we can
So
just.
just modify the plan, and,
Put them into
yeah.
a landscape plan, just so it gives more of a screen.
Now we had discussed a fence in the rear of the property, and,
Over on the side. We extended it down the left side of the property. Yeah.
We're gonna bring it down below just so, because those were the two.
oh, I know we discussed one, that's on top of the retaining wall, correct?
Yeah.
We also discussed one in the rear in the 50-foot, so you're gonna
We have that.
come down at a 90-degree angle that way, okay?
Not quite a 90, but yeah, an angle along the back.
Yep.
That's the high portion of the lot too, so it'll screen the back properties good, because we're going down substantially by the time we get to the building.
One of my concerns is prohibiting the outside storage of materials.
Materials meaning, like.
You're not gonna have stacks of wood or logs or,
Yeah, it wouldn't be logs, but I mean, I would, if you can limit it to like maybe behind the building and out of sight or something, so we have some space to, you know, if we have pallets or something that come in or something, you know, we don't wanna be arguing with the town over things cause we have that, if we put that fence up and we have that
Right.
left side and the buildings in
Yeah.
there, you know, I mean, if it was something that we could keep out of sight and not, you know.
Right, and that's part of the concern is
Yeah,
that, I
I understand.
we're trying to provide for the neighbors as best we can, because concerns were raised. And for sure, they don't want to be looking over and seeing huge piles of,
Yeah.
you know, various materials
If we
back.
put the fence up on the backside, I mean, they really shouldn't be, you know, seeing that lot at all. I mean, with the tree line that's there and the fence on the back, if they're in their backyard, they shouldn't see us at all. We shouldn't.
Yeah, because it'll be higher.
Yeah, because the elevation's high on the backside of the lot. It goes down from there.
It'd be tough to see down, you
Okay.
But when you're proposing materials, you're just discussing materials on pallets.
Yeah, like palletized stuff, yeah.
I think what you're trying to get at is make sure we're not storing logs there and wood chips and mulch.
No,
I
it's
mean,
not
if the
wood.
mulch is gonna be bagged on pallets, it's different than mulch piles and wood chip piles and
No
logs.
gravel or stockpiles or logs or anything like
Right.
that on the side. That's not what we're looking for this one for.
Right, and then we wanted to limit, I mean, I wouldn't want 100 pallets out there stacked full of
Yeah.
stuff, or a giant tower, you know,
This
that's,
building, like, just so you guys know, I mean, it's gonna be, whatever, 4 or 5 bays.
right,
It's gonna be
right,
individual people that.
Yeah,
it's not-
I expect
it's
with
not
their
gonna be one
work-
big building like a.
with their
company's
work
gonna come in and
areas,
stock
yeah.
The whole backyard, we're not looking for that. And one whole side of it's gonna be mine for my.
Now, we discussed that this isn't a publicly accessible building. All right. Because that falls under a lot different
Yeah, no, it's fine.
requirements.
The lighting in the rear, it's, what type of lighting are you gonna be using as far as thinking about the neighbors?
know. It'll be
And
dark
are they,
sky
and will
compliant.
they be, will it be all night,
Doesn't
overnight
have to be
lighting?
all night, we can have it on a timer, you know, it shuts off
Well,
at 8 o'clock, something, and it will be all facing forward towards the building.
And it'll be shielded, it'll be dark sky compliant. There'll be no spillover to the
But our bylaws require that the lights be shut off or not be on on more than a half hour before the opening of business or a half hour after the closing of business. So if we're gonna allow 7 to 7, that would be 6:30 to 7.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, it's,
No hazardous materials stored on the property greater than household quantities acceptable. You're gonna be doing a lot of site disturbance, so we would like you to file a vermin control plan with the Board of Health, pretty basic. It's, because you're gonna be disturbing a fair amount of land, and
what did you say it was?
a vermin control
Oh,
plan, so.
okay, I've seen it on houses, I've never seen it on lots, but just, so I do that with Kevin?
In order to get your certificate of occupancy for the various buildings, you're gonna have to get approval through, was it the building department, or have to review? I believe that was a condition that,
Oh, about material on the site?
no,
So occupancy, do we do individual occupancies?
right, it has to meet the requirements of a craftsman, tradesman,
Put
professional.
occupancy on the actual building.
Well, you get an
One
occupancy permit for that,
Yeah, and
right,
then the use is gonna comply to the zoning.
exactly.
Yeah, that, condition number 7, prospective tenants will need to consult with the Carver building and fire officials prior to occupying their respective units. And that's been a standard condition we've put on all of the zoning.
Right. I myself would like to see a prohibition of tractor trailers, and there's a lot of reasons for that. Blind corners, extensive pedestrian traffic bordering a residential zone, lack of sidewalks, you're on a side row, and the problems with oncoming traffic.
That's kind of a kick in the ass, because you never know, you never know who's gonna be, I mean, you get deliveries in neighborhoods, you know, of tractor trailers now, they come to drop off, like, an Amazon package can come in a tractor trailer. It's so hard to limit that. We're not looking for this yard
And-
to be a depot or delivery. I have properties in other towns that all my trucks and equipment and everything are in, so we're not looking for that at all, and it's a very limited access around it. But the sight line on that, coming out of that entrance is fine. I mean, and we've actually made it so we can go around the rotation that you guys wanted.
And it's, the residential zone is to the rear of the property, not
Well,
with the
the
access.
problem is that it's heavily trafficked by bicycles and pedestrians coming out of the residential area onto that road, and there's no sidewalk, and there's limited sights of view. And somebody coming over that hill, doing 35 miles an hour, which is the speed limit, seeing a tractor trailer in front of them, turning, changing. They're not known for their speed or their mobility. And then there's problems, whether it's the summer with the blind side or in the winter with the slick roads and kids running around. So it was prohibited on the property next door. We limited it to 20,
Box trucks.
yeah,
What the
28
decision
feet.
said.
Or
I don't think it
26 feet.
had, I don't think it had a
Oh,
number, it just
okay,
said
yeah.
box truck.
Is there a difference between deliveries and trucks that work there? I mean, I can see where you
That's what I'm
order something and it comes in a tractor trailer, that wasn't, the onus wasn't on you. But if you're renting it out to somebody that has tractor trailers, you say no. I mean.
My
there's a
concern is, my personal concern is tractor trailers in that area of turning, stopping, entering and exiting from the site. That's because the front of your site is gonna have arborvitae's on it. Nobody's gonna see that tractor trailer until it's almost out at the road.
Yeah.
And it's, you can see that there's,
You know, I understand what you're saying, but we could go back and forth on this all forever, but the real thing is, I mean, if you get a 30-foot box truck, that 30-foot box truck's worse getting in and out of that site than a tractor trailer. I mean, I've been driving tractor trailer since I was
I
17
yes.
years old, so I mean, I know, you know, I mean, I do know what you're saying, but that truck, when it comes out onto the road, is no different than a box truck. And, I mean, it really isn't. I mean, it's not like we're backing onto the site. We're not,
Okay.
like I say, when we exit the site, we can use the travel lanes, because it, you know, you've got a 30-foot wide mouth on the driveway. We can get in, and I mean, honestly, it's not that I plan on having tractor trailers there, because the lot really doesn't work for that, you know, you can see how we had to work it. The two entrances, it did, it would've been nice to go around it, but the way it is now, it's not working.
I know, and the two entrances, but yeah, we ran into other issues.
Yeah, no, I know, I'm saying, so right now, it doesn't, the tractor trailer issue isn't really for us. It's just when they're pulling up, you know, next door, or they're pulling up there, there's tractor trailers on that street, so you're limited in one, and, you know, I can be just, you know, hearing from you guys, when you see a tractor trailer out there that could be delivering an Amazon package this big. I mean, they stop in front of my house on 27 with a tractor trailer. It's crazy, you know, it's just what we've come to in this, you know.
Oh, well, yeah,
Yeah.
God help them if they pull a tractor trailer up in front of my house. There'd be people screaming, but, no, I appreciate that.
Is there a way of limiting it to, like, I'm sorry, I don't know your name, but Donald said about, you know, like, besides deliveries of, you know, common stuff or something, because I mean, it's not bringing tractor trailers onto the site in a business that would be running in and out of there. It's just, if something comes with a tractor trailer, they come in, they offload, and
I get that, but I don't see how we could, I personally, because I tried, but I don't see how you can alleviate my personal concerns, because any incident that happened there ultimately comes back as part of my responsibility for making sure that I have covered all the safety and health and protection aspects for the residents. So, and I couldn't, even if it's just a fender bender, I could probably live with that. But if somebody actually got hurt in regards to this, because, and that I personally, because it's not up to me, it's up to the board, so.
I understand, but yeah, like I say, all I'm saying too is, so how are you gonna feel if it's a 28-foot box truck and somebody hits it? It's the same thing.
Well, no, I understand that, but it's a 28 versus a 65.
And it's harder to turn,
okay?
it's harder to turn on that road than a tractor trailer.
And being out there, I do notice the school buses that go up and down
Yeah.
there all day long. And the main concern is there is no sidewalks whatsoever.
Yeah.
That's the key right there.
And for me, it's, to think about it, it's kind of an issue of consistency. You know, the lot right next to you, we restricted them and to the box trucks. And I can only imagine how they would feel
Yeah.
if we just sat there and argued a little bit longer, maybe we would have gotten.
It's a tight lot,
truck.
it's up at the crest of the hill, and they'd have a hard time getting trucks in and out of there though than our lot.
Right, it's a different position.
That's why I keep saying it's not apples to
It's a
apples.
different stopping sight distance for
Yeah,
that.
it's we're in the middle of the
department-wise.
road.
Everyone's unique, you know?
Yeah.
We're the farthest point from the top and the mouth of the road, you know?
There's, most of the sites in Carver that exist don't have a restriction on what kind of cars pulling in and out of them. So
Well, mostly Main Street is appropriate for larger vehicles, but once you get on the side streets, the residential areas, it becomes a balance.
Sure. But that, yeah.
We
Is
understand
there
that.
any signage that can be put there to let people know that there's,
Like flashing lights and
Yeah.
siren, I couldn't answer that.
I mean, can we just do it from an engineering perspective and say if there's an adequate sight distance in accordance with the AASHTO standards that it'd be acceptable, or?
So what do we do with the guy next door to you? Tell him, too bad.
Well, he has a different situation and he didn't present that option, I guess.
His sight line is totally different, he's on the corner if somebody
Yeah.
comes around that corner. He's gotta get a truck out when you come
He
around.
he has a
Two
different stopping
corners.
sight distance.
And he's got a 150-foot lot
Less than 75 feet from yours, is that correct?
on what now?
It's roughly
the
75
entrance.
feet from his entrance to your entrance, yeah.
But he's closer to the two intersections that you are coming around that.
No, I
corner.
don't think,
more than that.
what's the frontage of the,
It's 200.
200 feet.
Yeah.
yeah. so-
It was listed
yeah.
as
Yeah,
in here
so it's about
somewhere.
100 feet away, so 100 feet of stopping sight distance is a lot. I mean, most, on a 35 mile per hour road, you need about 290 feet stopping sight.
295 feet.
Yeah.
Well, you're welcome to present any evidence you want that you think will convince me.
We're not convincing you.
Because I see the
Yeah, I
kids and the
understand that.
bicycles, and they're going to quickies all the time, and they're not looking, and they're running across the street. And
Yeah,
but I'm not the sole decision maker, you have to remember
A
that.
bicycle, I think with an 18-wheeler truck, I mean, they're more susceptible to someone, a young kid in a Mustang that's going well over the speed limit than an 18-wheeler truck, someone on a bike.
Because you're entering into the site and you're coming out of the site at basically a stop.
That's stop.
So, you're really not, like he says, I mean, a car coming around that corner and there's a kid on a bicycle or something, they're in danger with that. They're not in danger with the truck pulling out because you're basically entering from a stop, both ways.
Both ways.
Yeah, I mean, like Ellen was saying, I think maybe even just like a blind drive type sign or something like that, trucks
We
entering,
can put truck engine signs on where, however you guys wanted it on the street,
might, yeah, because, I mean, with regards to your concerns, my bigger concern is, like you were saying, the Mustang coming flying down from top of the hill, that's,
Or Stone Street.
And we do have a different sight line from the neighbor. I understand what you're saying about, like, fair to him and not, we just have a different sight line.
because you do have kind of a blind curve coming around here.
Right, and
Coming from the
around
neighbor-
this way,
coming from the neighborhood.
right. But we have no say over that, that's on the responsibility of the driver.
Right. Is it, if we base it on engineering as opposed to feel, how it feels, or?
Well, I've seen the turn radiuses, and they come in, interfere with oncoming traffic.
But like I say, a box truck interferes more. A box truck, if you put a box truck out on that street, it's
And
That's
just
why
a
they
reg-
make tractor trailers to get into spots, so you can't
I
get
mean,
an extra.
a regular car has to cross over the other lane to get to the,
Yeah.
you know, if it's traveling the opposite direction, so.
And
Yeah, but not to make the turn. It does not have to impede oncoming traffic in order to make
To
a
make
turn.
the turn.
A box truck might, like you're saying,
Yeah.
but a tractor trailer surely
a
will.
box truck has to make a wider radius than any tractor trailer coming out of there. I mean, because when you've got a straight out.
If I may, do we just want to poll the board on this issue?
Is that?
Because we're having a
Yeah.
pretty spirited
Right,
conversation.
right, no,
But
right.
maybe just polling the board on this particular issue would be helpful.
Keep in mind,
Well,
I'm not looking for a tractor
Right.
trailer depot or my trucks going there or anything. I have a yard in Kingston where all my equipment and everything is. It's just for deliveries and
Yeah.
just normal business, you know, so that we're not going back and forth to town all the time afterwards, you know.
Well, I would prefer that, we're not voting till, if we close the hearing tonight and we deliberate, then we won't be voting till our next meeting, and I would recommend that the board have the chance to vote on the individual conditions as presented. And that way they can, the board as a whole, as individuals, can make up their own concerns with those, yeah. And if they feel that it's appropriate, then it's appropriate. And if they feel that increased safety measures, they would allow it with increased safety measures, and then that would be the way I would.
Yeah.
Can I ask one question?
Sure, absolutely.
It's just what I'm saying here. Like what Tom is saying now, if we did something informal that just gave us an opinion, we know what we have to come back with. If it means us going back and saying, well, we have to have box trucks in there.
I can't approve, but each individual member of the board is allowed to, I believe,
Yeah.
give their
Absolutely.
opinion on the matter.
And I do recall that someplace I used to work, I can't not remember the name, but they used to get deliveries and they'd say no 18-wheelers get delivered, no room for them.
Right.
So I don't see why you couldn't, if you're having a delivery, say, no 18-wheelers, we don't have the room for it, and have it sent with a box truck.
But the site is designed to get an 18-wheeler off and on the property and get around the building.
Right.
Yes.
And the site
But the road is,
Well-
site next door's got.
Right, so
18 going
my
in and out.
concern with that is, and I've seen it around my house, is that an 18-wheeler pulls up and stops out on the road and makes their delivery. I'm like, well, I can't get an 18-wheeler in there, so now I'm just gonna block access to the site and block up the road, make my delivery, and then carry on my way.
no, I've seen it too.
So,
But if that's the case,
that would be my biggest concern with regards to the property as far as 18-wheeler trying to make a delivery.
Well, we make it
And-
accessible for any size 18-wheeler.
And that's why I would, make sure that anybody making deliveries is aware that they need to pull into the property.
They're always gonna pull off street when they're unloading anyways, when they have a lot to go into, you know, they're never gonna wanna park on the street and bring stuff into the back we're building, though, you know?
Yeah.
And that lot is designed to, I mean, safety-wise, I mean, the turning radius and everything, we made a 30-foot entrance. I mean, you hug one side or the other of our entrance, it just gives you a better cutout onto the road. I mean, it's designed for that.
Well,
type
I've
of
seen, I've seen the improvements as far as the, looking at your map, as far as the, cutting the parking lot. Where's that? There was some parking lot adjustments made to make sure that no cars, if there was a full parking lot, that something was coming in, that they wouldn't strike any cars in the parking lot. So there's been improvements made to the,
yeah, but look at
to the
this
travel
turning
lane.
radius to come around that way.
but again, that's something that,
Yeah, I know,
yeah.
yep. And if they want to give their opinion, they're welcome to it.
Can I ask, like, John, so what's your opinion on the tractor trailer? Would you rather see trucks being able to enter onto a site, go completely around and drive out. You got nothing backing in and out of the road, you got nothing standing on the road.
Well, like I said, I've seen the improvements, and I like the look of it. And as far as the turning radius and things like that, I'm okay with it.
I'd just like to see some signage.
Signage is no problem, we can.
You know, I've seen like flashing.
Probably wouldn't be flashing, because then we'd have to get something to power it and everything, but it would be truck entering signs and it,
Yeah, there's an entire litany of things for putting a sign out under MTS, the Massachusetts Universal Traffic Code, so.
Yeah, we'll make sure that MUTCD compliant.
Thank you, get my initials in the right place.
And place them out there.
Yes, you're up.
My thing is I want to make sure that the trucks aren't stopping on the road. That they absolutely positively have to come in to the site that you made available for them to come into.
Yeah, and we, like I said, we made it for that reason, so they go out back, do their business, and they drive around the building, go out, I mean, that's the whole idea of the way we.
From what I understand too, didn't you change the way that the traffic was coming in?
Well, they wanted us to go clockwise or counterclockwise, so we just changed it to what.
Reverse it.
What G.
Right, they went,
What this guy wanted. right?
last time they were in England, now they're back to,
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not counterclockwise, so it is,
going off to the right, and then you
going
go
off to the right,
drive
yeah.
into a drive-through.
We changed it to what you guys wanted.
Yeah, so it is counterclockwise.
Right.
But with the
It's not an
airplane,
airplane, it goes off to the left from there.
I follow the arrows.
no, the point being is that it's not gonna cross over the traffic.
Well, to take a right turn in there, it has to go completely according to the turn chart.
Well,
But even.
what I'm looking at is that it's not gonna because of the
It doesn't
turn.
start in the other lane, it starts in its lane.
They've given it
across.
enough.
I mean, if you do
That
a
is
car,
considered
a passenger car
the one
turning.
with the truck on it.
Mr. Bott,
Sir,
do we know how wide that road is?
how wide
Forest Street
Street
is?
is? I do not, but it's your standard,
Oh, this one right
your
here.
standard looking road to me, I would guess it's probably got
To
24
come
foot
from the
pavement.
right side of the road.
24 foot width
I'm
Side
guessing.
of the road, they're gonna be able.
See, he's got to come.
versus like Main Street, which would probably be more double.
So
Now, coming out and taking
Yeah,
a
I mean,
left
standard
is
is
fine.
12-foot travel lanes are pretty standard
Right,
with the shoulder
but-
on the end, so probably 24,
It
24,
will-
3-foot
it shouldn't be
shoulder,
coming
so
in from
maybe
here
30 feet
anyways, because it
across.
shouldn't
Right.
be coming down Forest Street to
Right.
Stone Street. It should only be coming in off of 44.
And that
But we can't limit
intersection's a
where it
rough
comes
one.
from.
And I know on the safety stuff, we keep going back to that, but like when you take your test to drive a tractor trailer, you're told to use the road, You're just supposed to be safe and use the whole road to get you.
Maybe
why
we
the
could limit
curbs
it to a certain
Slanted on the
hours
rotaries and stuff, little back wheels to go over. They're not
between
square.
10 and 2 or something, Monday through Friday. But it's something to consider, and
So far on the list I got, John, okay, Ellen wants sign, Kevin wants no trucks, delivery on street. I got a kind of pretty good feeling how you feel about this, Connie. So
Is that a no?
that's a concern.
That's a
Yeah.
concern, right?
All right, and Rich? Did you want to express any?
Oh, it's just, we got the other lot there restricted. My concern is, the traffic that's on that road, especially the school buses and everything that I see go through there. Because I know when we were there on the sidewalk, just our cars on the side there.
Yeah.
It made it challenging to get by. Whether you 18-wheeler or a regular truck going through there,
Yeah, but we're just gonna.
It's something I gotta think about. That's,
Yeah. Like I say, the whole idea is, we get the traffic off the road, because we're building it so we can get everything onto our site and not being interfering with the traffic out.
that's why I was asking how wide the road was and everything,
24 foot road's a good road to turn in and out of.
Well, for the purposes of site plan, it's a simple majority vote. So if 3 members are okay, then that's okay.
yes.
Yeah.
That's fine.
But the same conditions will be imposed under the special permit as they will be under the site plan review.
Hours of operation likely, but typically the physical elements of the site are on the site plan side and the actual use is on the special permit side. Some of those permit descriptions, and we can, add them to either one, but.
Typically, they're in past.
Lots of those conditions are very similar between the two. actually.
Right, that we include them in both of them, because generally they run concurrently. All right. Any-
We have one last.
I don't get to vote on most of these. I'm superfluous.
Extra.
Now that you got the easy one done, what about this waiver you want for bicycle rack? Is that gonna be a big problem too?
But you guys really want a bicycle rack? How many of you want one?
I don't know,
I don't know who's gonna come to you there on a bicycle, but if that's what you want, put a bicycle rack.
Yeah, but what if a guy has a bike shop there?
Yeah, that's true, so we'll put a bicycle rack.
You'd be welcoming of a bicycle
That's the first
shop,
I seen the
right?
bicycle rack tonight, I'm all, seriously, bicycle racks? But,
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean,
it's
certainly,
required.
it can be added. to
Yeah,
the
that's fine.
Space for
Yeah.
it.
And I think that,
$400, you can buy a nice snake.
is there any, what was that, was just that comment, there was, what was the other one from the engineer? Was
Was
there-
one of the waivers that you requested.
Yeah.
Yeah, but was there two comments or one?
No, it's just the curb cut location.
Okay, so we're good.
So to that effect, since we're talking about the waivers, so the other waivers that were on the plan, section 3424, applicant requests a waiver for providing parking perimeter landscaping. Is that still a waiver you're requesting?
Yeah, it's just an interpretation by the review engineer regarding the number of spaces in the back and how much we'd have to increase the screening on the sides. So we proposed a fence along with the retaining wall and arborvitae, a 10-foot wide screen with arborvitae on the right side. And a natural buffer and fence on the northerly side. And we talked to the chairman about improving the front buffer to be it's something that's going to stay year-round, which would be another green giant or arborvitae type tree that will stay year-round. So yes.
So yes, we're
Yes.
requesting that waiver. We're going to say three. And 341 application, applicants request a waiver to allow 8 parking spaces in the floor of the building. F&O recommends that 1 parking space is moved either off either end of the row, removing the 2 total and replace with a striped pavement marking area to improve sight distance and turning motion around the building.
Yeah, so we did do that. We
Yep.
moved the 2 spaces and improved the circulation.
Alrighty, and 3116, waiver for calipers over 10-inch trees, the board typically waives that. And then, of course, the most difficult one, applicant requests a waiver for providing bike racks. And F&O, Fuss and O'Neill says, understands that the planning board does not typically grant this waiver.
We'll just put a bike rack in, we're all set.
All right, so we don't need,
How about we trade the bike rack for, do we even have the tractor trailers? It's a win-win for everybody.
so those are the waivers, and in those conditions that we talked about in this draft decision the board has in front of them. The standard waivers prior to issuance of a building permit, copy of the recorded decision will be filed at the Registry of Deeds. The project must be constructed as approved in the site plan. Any other revisions require approval from the board as a modification of the decision. 3, the applicant is responsible for the proper operation and maintenance of the site. During construction, sedimentation and soil control can be installed, repaired, and supplements needed. Dust control is required during construction, and the roadway apron is to be kept swept and clear of any dust, dirt, or debris. Copy of an operation manual plan shall be submitted to the town and Fuss and O'Neill prior to the issuance of a building permit. The dumpster pad shall be burned, and any runoff from the dumpster pad shall be contained in the catch basins. I don't think that's something we actually talked about in this plan, but it's been sort of standard in a number of things the board has done before. Pursuant to sections 3213 and 3215, screening from residential properties must be achieved, maintained, as well as visual screening from all parking areas from Forest Street and abutting property shall be established and maintained. 6, only household qualities of hazardous materials are permitted. 7, prospective tenants will need to consult with Carver building and fire officials prior to occupying their respective units. 8 per Carver bylaw, section 3131K, separate sign permit application required for new signage is proposed, including at the site entrance. 9, prior to the issuance of certificate of occupancy, use and occupancy, any outstanding balances for the R&I account will be paid. As-built plans will be submitted to the town engineer and the planning departments in both electronic and hard copy formats. In accordance with section 3180 compliance, town engineer shall inspect the project to make sure it's been completed in compliance with the approved site plan and conditions. Tonight we talked about a couple other things. Special permit required per section 34360 will be required to allow more than the 10,000 square foot of impervious surface. No public access to the buildings, vermin control plan, and 13, I have vehicles, I got, it was at one point, vehicles limited to box trucks, vehicles limited to...
Again, it's a draft, and when we come back to vote, it's open for discussion, and again, we'll vote on all of the conditions,
Right.
because it should be by a majority of the
And
board.
just so I know, so when you guys do vote, it's gonna be site plan approval for like, as it stands, contingent on the special permit?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
We good?
We are?
So we got a motion to continue to the 25th?
Not yet.
Okay.
I'll make that said motion.
We can't make that motion yet,
Okay.
but thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Sorry. I want to make sure we
No, yeah,
didn't leave something out there.
We did.
Thanks very much.
No, you have a good evening.
You too.
All right. Well, we have to, it's a public hearing.
We haven't closed the public.
Well, we have to allow the public to speak. Is there anybody from the audience that would care to speak in regards to this particular subject? No. Now you can make a motion.
I will make that said motion.
To continue it to what date?
To continue to 25th?
10:25, yes, sir.
10:25 at 7 PM.
And
Motion made by Mr. Robinson, seconded by Ms. Sordillo. Any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Dion,
Mr. Dion says aye.
Mr. Gatsky,
John Gasky says aye.
Mr. Robinson,
Mr. Robinson says aye.
Ms. Sordillo,
aye.
and Cornelius Shea says aye. All right. Planning Director notes, Mr. Bott?
We had had a discussion earlier a bit with town council, so in your packets is the present operating procedures for how the planning board does its business. And this was recently approved, most recently approved in 2016. So that is the home for these process and policy things we talked about before.
Yes.
So that document you've got is what the current procedures and policies are. So I think we're probably going to need to take a couple meetings to look about what you guys have done business with as the planning board historically and see if any of those things that are in there need to be tweaked, moved, modified based on what you've got. As far as from town council, you don't have to post a hearing for it. If we were doing a change to subdivision regulations, because that's a regulation that requires posting a hearing. But just to create policy for the board, that's just simply putting it on the agenda. So we could have a running item to review policies and procedures for a couple meetings and go through them as we need to.
Well, yeah, I would, let's start with, well, this is a procedure. This isn't the policy. This is pretty much copy and paste from the law, although...
Yeah, so the procedure manual is a combination of some of the things that are part of the law and some of the things that are part of this process. So it is a policy document that you've got here, not a local regulation.
Well, it's right. It's a procedural.
Correct.
And, yeah. And then we have what Marlene McCullough.
Yeah,
Previously
she had looked at and made some recommendations to the board in 2000. Once it is as part of my archaeology gig, the things I find when I'm looking for stuff. So I just offered up what she had dealt with before, because Marlene was here, I think, for a while before she started suggesting maybe some policy changes or something like that. I'm not sure how far into her tenure this was. But as I pointed out, she probably brought a lot of the things to Carver that she was doing in Falmouth when she was the assistant town planner there prior to being here. So we can, peek into some of the policies and procedures. I think there were some good ones in Kingston that we did. There's like some good ones in Falmouth, and we can bring those to the board and look at, are those kind of things we might want to do policy-wise moving forward.
Right, because there's some clarifications in here that, having had discussion with Ms. Quissel earlier, aren't accurate, but should be included as best practices, but not noted, but also noted that it is not a requirement of the law.
So here's the good news, is that everybody gets homework. So you can take this home and take a look at it, make some marks in the margin. You can send me some notes, or we can just talk about them at our future meeting.
And one of the discussions that we had, and it's also in Marlene's thing, was closing the public hearing, debating amongst the board, and then putting the vote off for till the next meeting to allow you the time to write up a draft. And that's for sure.
Yeah, I think that's something I've seen in a number of places, where the board basically says, we'd like the planner to put together a decision based on the hearing.
It was also, one of the points Ms. Quessel brought up was that this is the way it's best to do it this way, to close the hearing, to debate, and that gives you the ability, like you did tonight.
Yep.
But that's certainly one of the procedural issues. And then, of course, recommending the approval of the draft or denial, and continue to file it within 14 days, but noting that 90 days from the close of the hearing is the requirement of the law. In certain cases, for instance, the special permit case, and it might be different in other cases. I know the Board of Appeals, if something is appealed under Section 15 of 40A, once the decision of the Board of Appeals is made, they are required to file within 14 days. Or if the court is found in favor of or ruled on a judicial point in regards to an appeal, then the board is required to acknowledge it within 14 days and provide. But those are procedurals. But policy is something different. Procedures is the best method that should be followed in regards to these. And I want to make sure that it's the best practice and take Amy Quessel's recommendations and yours and Ms. McCollum's. Because she had some good ones too. And it's something I know you've been itching for. Working with the board to develop a single signature?
No, well, I think the, like I said, for years and years in Kingston, the chairman signed the decisions. Now, Amy said, oh, there's no requirement to have something signed, but in my mind, how do you know it's the thing unless it's got somebody's wedding signature on it, likely the chair's?
And sure.
In Falmouth, the planner signed.
Right.
And that was what the board voted to do that. That was kind of new to me. I never signed so many things as I did when I was in Falmouth.
Right.
But I think that's sort of the practice that I'm sort of comfortable with and familiar with is
no, absolutely. Especially
chairman signs.
the A&Rs and subdivision plans that have to be filed within a certain period of time, like 21 days.
So we're talking about a decision, not necessarily a plan. So a decision signed by the chair is what I had suggested.
Right.
But as far as a set of plans goes, those are typically signed by, and those usually don't have they're not ticking, because after we make a decision, with the exception of the A&R plans, that has to wait an appeal period before anybody can endorse the plans anyhow. So there's nothing pressing about getting a plan endorsed as opposed to a decision.
Right. Right, I thought I had read it here, voting, A&R definitive plans approved have some flexibility.
Yeah, the only plan that's essentially ticking is an A&R plan.
Right, right.
Everything else.
Right, and the board should, yep, bring that up for discussion and a vote and see how they feel. Again, I would like to continue it till next meeting, that
Oh, yeah, we're going to talk about this for, like I said, my suggestion
Yeah,
was
this is gonna-
just
this
have
is-
it on as a sort of a standing agenda item. If the board has the strength at the end of the night, we'll
Sure.
pick it up. If they don't, people will go home and we'll pick it up at the next meeting.
if there's various other policy issues that board members would like to introduce for consideration, it'll give them a chance to do so. All right, CPTC fall schedule?
Yes, so you also got an email today. I've been poking the folks at CPTC about when the schedule's going to come out, because they do essentially trainings in the fall, and they have a conference in the spring where they do these. And the last time we did this, we actually hired a trainer to do it on our time. So the schedule is out, and what I had recommended to the board, because we did initially rules and responsibilities of the Planning Board and Zoning Board of Appeals and the zoning law, introduction to the zoning bylaw. So these other two offerings, special permits and variances, is offered on Wednesday, November 30th, and I know how you feel about Wednesdays, Kevin, so.
And I work Wednesdays.
Yeah, so that's when it's open, that's when it's been scheduled here
But at 5:30.
at 5:30.
So it is possible it could be over by 7,
Okay.
right?
Yeah, they're usually about an hour and a half.
That's Wednesday.
I mean, there's no reason why I couldn't come at 5:30 and excuse myself at 5 or 7.
Yeah, but at the same time,
It's on the
if the
computer.
schedule,
It's on the computer.
Oh, it is?
yeah, if the schedule isn't convenient, then we can go the other route and just hire a trainer to come and do it on our time. But those are the two modules I think are really queued up next in line to help the board with the administration of their duties.
Yeah, I won't able to do that because I gotta work till 6, so by the time I get home and stuff, it's almost 6:45.
Yep. So like I said, that's the schedule, but we can pick our own schedule and with a little bit of lead time, work with CPTC.
And we received that information in an email today, correct?
Yep.
I thought there were two of them scheduled. Now we have one next Tuesday at 3:30 and/or 5:30?
Those are the open meeting law trainings.
Right, and everybody here should find time to attend one of those meetings.
Where are
And-
those again?
Those are going to be at the fire station, I believe.
Tuesday at 5:30?
I think so.
3:30 or?
Yes,
is it
there's a 3:30 and a 5:30.
Okay.
I have a question.
What's the date on that again?
Next Tuesday?
25th.
I'm a graduate of the open meeting laws through the school committee, so I've got a certificate from Old Colony for that, so. Now, you had mentioned that.
Now, this requirement is every 2 years.
You had mentioned the Mullins rule.
Correct.
So right now, I'm superfluous. If the Mullins rules go through, then you won't have any need for alternate associate members on ZBA or planning, correct?
I have never seen a town say, we've adopted the Mullen Rule, we are going to nuke
Why wouldn't
the
you?
alternate.
Because they'd have even less opportunity to participate.
Well, the associate member's in the zoning bylaw. So to get rid of the associate, you'd have to go to town meeting and eliminate this provision from,
Well, if you're gonna put in an article for, accept the Mullins, then you should put in a companion article to eliminate the associates.
Except I don't think it's necessary because the associate votes in the instance of an absence or a conflict by any member of the board.
Well, there wouldn't, absences would be covered, but conflicts.
But you get to miss one meeting for the Mullen Rule. So if you've got a meeting, hearing that takes, 3 or 4 meetings, if
Well, it
somebody
just seems to be less pertinent.
like I said, I've not seen anybody say, oh, we're mullened up, we're gonna get rid of the excellent associate member we have who asks such great questions.
After a decision, can board members submit a minority report or a dissenting opinion?
I've never heard of that before. I'm gonna go with no.
Well, I know other governmental entities do. Or,
Yeah, the Supreme Court.
Right, but they're at the top of the pile, right?
Yeah.
Congress.
No, I have never seen a dissenting opinion or a minority decision or anything like that.
Well, it wouldn't be this minority
Yeah.
statement.
And I think that sort of statement is what we would do during the course of the meeting. When we get down to, are we approving this, are we disapproving this, that's that opportunity.
I've written some things down that I would just like to share because I'm going to be going to the hospital soon and I am concerned about this board. And so I wrote these things down. I don't want anybody to take it personally, but they're my thoughts, okay? So I wrote, gentlemen, sometimes it appears to me that you are being tutored by others when you are making decisions concerning approvals or denials on issues coming before our board that meet Carver's bylaws. When we were sworn in, we agreed to be faithful and perform to all those duties put in front of this planning board while keeping in compliance. We are here, as I see it, to assure Carver residents that voted for us to have faith. We will carry out what is expected of our board in a fair and legal decision on new or existing businesses, homes, etc. Do you want our town to encourage or discourage growth, increase our taxes, and much worse? Do we want Carver to flourish and be known for what it can offer to new businesses and new residents, or become a ghost town with empty buildings becoming dilapidated? What did our forefathers want for this thriving town, and what do we do as their unforeseen future cause it to become? What will this planning board do to shape our lovely town? Are you voting nay because it is your own personal agenda, or yay because recommendations have been approved? Let us work together as a team for Carver and the good for all, not just some, please, and thank you. So, not to insult anybody, but these are things I've observed that bother me, and I'm here for one reason, and one reason only, to go by our guidelines and improve our town for the future. So, thank you for listening to me.
And I am too, and I know you said not to take it personally, so I won't, but it does sound like an accusation, and I think caution should be taken when making statements along those lines.
I respect that.
All right. Any further discussion?
Yes. In our package was a letter from Bridgestone Development.
Wait,
Yeah, that was just the notice of appeal or the notice of request for constructive approval. I just shared a copy with the board.
Hold on, but it doesn't say a request, it is a notice of constructive approval. They're claiming constructive approval in the letter.
Yeah, so I don't want to get,
right, so,
it's not on the agenda to
Right.
discuss this. It's in there for the purpose of that, but there's a process.
Yes.
And that process starts with that, and they have more things to do to perfect that particular application.
Okay, but
right.
how did we even get to this point?
Well, we had a discussion earlier with Amy on a broad topics that covered
And,
broad topics,
yep,
and I don't think we can talk about individual,
No, no.
so, currently, it's in the hands of the town clerk and the town council.
That's correct.
We can say that. I'm confident that they can handle it appropriately, so. If that's not the case, then it will come back to us, and then we can have a discussion. Unfortunately, it's out of our hands at this moment. Is that a correct
That's
assessment? Okay.
Based on our conversation with town council yesterday.
okay, so. I'm not gonna say anything for fear of getting in trouble, but this, in my opinion, is a load of bunk. And
We can't discuss it any further.
Yep, that's fine.
Out of our hands, and it's overly specific.
That,
I know it's not, there's a very gray area in regards to the open meeting law in regards to this, but it's not a gray area I'm willing to push to the point. But just so you know that at any time, any applicant, whether approved or denied, the potential for a lawsuit is there. There's always a party on one side or the other that doesn't agree with the vote. It's,
there's appeals, and then there's this.
right,
And that's not an appeal.
All right, so once again, I think we try to keep it as generic
Yeah.
as possible.
okay. All right, any further discussion? Seeing none, the board will accept the motion
To adjourn?
to adjourn.
I'll make that
We
motion.
didn't go over our minutes.
Oh, yep.
They weren't posted on the agenda as to what minutes,
Okay.
but you are correct. I think we're in advance of September 13th. We haven't approved that one yet.
I think that's the one that was, yeah, I think 13th is the outstanding one that we've got right now.
Okay, well, I'm familiar with it.
I'm familiar with it. Have you got it?
I don't think it has to be stated which specific minutes you're
Oh,
voting on.
right, so,
If you want to
Right.
say motion to approve 913,
right, you're comfortable?
I'm comfortable.
Okay. I will accept the motion to approve the minutes of 9/10/2022.
Oh,
Rich?
second.
I'll make said motion.
Okay.
Who made,
Sorry.
Oh,
I was waiting for you to vote.
I'll make said vote.
Make a
Can't
motion,
catch the
right?
vote, but
Who voted first?
motion made by Ms. Sordillo, seconded by
I'll second it.
Mr. Gatsky. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. Approval of the minutes of 9/13/2022 passes. The board will accept the motion for adjournment.
I'll make a motion for adjournment.
Motion for adjournment made by Mr. Robinson, seconded by Ms. Sordillo. All in favor, say aye.
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 and
Thank you.
curiously adjourned at 9:13 after approving the minutes for 9:13.
Wow.
Okay.